You know that moment when your mind just won't shut off, when no matter how busy you are, no matter how many distractions you create, he still pops into your head. It's like he lives rent-free in your thoughts. You could be crushing it at work, laughing with friends, or lying in bed at night trying to sleep, and still, there he is. A memory, a message, a what if. And you keep asking yourself, why can't I stop thinking about him? You try to logic your way out of it, shame yourself for still caring, or worse, fantasize that maybe he'll finally come around. But the truth? This isn't about him. It never really was. It's about something deeper that got triggered in you. Something emotional, psychological, and real. And once you see what's really going on behind the obsession, everything changes. Because the moment you understand the root, you take your power back. Not by pretending you don't care, but by healing the reason you cared so deeply in the first place. Let's talk about it. That loop in your mind, the one where you keep replaying what he said, what he did, how it felt, isn't just about missing a person. It's about unresolved emotional energy. When something ends without closure, your brain keeps trying to make sense of it. It's like an open tab in your mental browser that never loads. You don't want to think about him all the time, but your emotions haven't caught up to your logic yet. He represented something to you. Maybe it was validation, maybe it was excitement, maybe it was the idea of what could have been. But now, without that connection, there's a gap, an emotional void, and your brain keeps returning to him, thinking he's the key to filling it. The real truth is that what you're stuck on is the feeling he gave you, not necessarily the man himself. He triggered something in you that made you feel alive, wanted, seen, and now that it's gone, your emotional system is scrambling to get it back. That's why even though you know logically he's not the right person, or he's moved on, or he's unavailable, your heart keeps circling back. You're not broken, you're not weak, you're just emotionally unfinished. You're craving a feeling you once associated with him, and the more you try to suppress it, the louder it gets. Part of what makes this so consuming is that our brains are wired to seek resolution. If a conversation ended awkwardly, if a breakup didn't give you real answers, or if you were ghosted or strung along, your mind wants a conclusion. But when that doesn't happen, it keeps you mentally tethered to the situation. That's why you keep imagining what you could have said differently. What would happen if he came back, or if he finally realized what he lost? It's your mind trying to write a better ending to the story. What you may not realize is that this obsession often has little to do with who he actually was. You're not just obsessing over him, you're obsessing over yourself in his eyes. You're questioning your worth, your desirability, your enoughness. Because if he didn't choose you, or if he left without explanation, then something inside you starts to wonder what you did wrong. That kind of uncertainty is poison. And your mind thinks that by replaying everything, you'll eventually find a clue, a moment, a reason that brings peace. But that peace won't come from analyzing the past, it comes from reclaiming the present. You have to begin asking a new question. Not why did he do that, or why wasn't I enough, but what did I make it mean about me? Because that's the core wound. That's the hook that keeps you emotionally stuck. Once you separate his behavior from your identity, the obsession starts to lose its grip. You start seeing the situation for what it really was, an experience, not a verdict on your value. He was a chapter, not your whole story. Yes, you can't stop thinking about him, but not because you're weak, not because you're desperate. It's because your emotional system got interrupted and it's searching for completion. The moment you realize you are the one who gives yourself that emotional closure, not him, is the moment you begin to heal. It doesn't mean the thoughts disappear overnight, but they stop controlling you. You're not chasing him anymore, you're finally meeting yourself. And in that, you start to move on, not by force, but by freedom. Sometimes, the reason you can't stop thinking about him isn't because of how great he was, but because of how little you showed up for yourself while you were with him. It's not always about what he did right, it's about what you let slide. The overthinking kicks in because deep down, you're not just mourning the connection, you're feeling the weight of all the moments you didn't speak up, didn't draw a boundary, or didn't walk away when your gut told you something was off. And now that he's gone, the silence is filled with your own self-questioning. That mental replay loop is It's not just romantic nostalgia. It's regret, it's guilt, it's wondering why you abandoned parts of yourself in order to keep someone who was never truly showing up for you. Maybe you accepted breadcrumbs and tried to convince yourself it was a full meal. Maybe you let mixed signals confuse your standards. Or maybe you lowered your expectations just to keep his attention. And now, in the quiet, those compromises start speaking louder than ever. Not because you failed, but because your intuition was trying to get your attention all along and now it finally has it. The obsession becomes a way to avoid facing what you didn't want to admit while it was happening. It feels safer to keep thinking about him than to ask the harder question, why did I not choose me? That's the real pain. Not that he's gone, but that you put your hope in someone who didn't deserve that level of access to your heart, and now you're left picking up the pieces. But here's the beauty in that. You're not crazy for wanting love. You're not weak for holding on. You were hopeful. You were invested. You were human. But now you're being called to learn, to ask what version of me thought this was enough? And more importantly, what version am I stepping into now? The more you focus on what you need to heal rather than what he did or didn't do, the more power you take back. Because while you can rewrite the past, you absolutely can redefine what you'll accept in the future, and that's the part that matters most. This isn't about shaming yourself for not knowing better. It's about recognizing that the version of you that stayed quiet, stayed small, or stayed hopeful in the face of red flags, she was just trying to feel loved. But you've grown. You see it now. That's why it hurts more in the aftermath than it did in the moment. Because now, your awareness has caught up with your experience. Now you see clearly what you were actually dealing with. And now, you're ready to choose differently. Thinking about him all the time is a symptom, not the root issue. The root is where you abandoned your own voice, your own needs, and your own standards in order to feel chosen. But here's the truth no one tells you. The more you focus on healing that part of you, the one that needs validation from someone else to feel worthy, the less appealing he starts to become in your mind. Not because he changed, but because you did. When you start to meet your own needs, you stop chasing the people who never could. And that's when real closure happens, not because someone gave it to you, but because you gave it to yourself. There's a trap many people fall into after a connection ends, and it's this: they confuse fantasy with reality. When you're constantly thinking about him, chances are you're not thinking about the real, day-to-day version of him. You're thinking about the idea of him. You're remembering the potential he showed, the little glimpses of affection, the chemistry, the rare vulnerable moment when he made you feel seen. But those moments, while powerful, were fragments, not the full picture. What your mind tends to do is romanticize those fragments, string them together, and create a version of him that's far more consistent, caring, and connected than he actually was. This version becomes intoxicating because it's not him you miss, it's who you thought he could be. That imagined version is the one who texts back right away, who doesn't leave you questioning where you stand, who actually shows up and makes you feel safe. That's not who he consistently was, that's who you hoped he would become. And when you invest emotionally in someone's potential rather than their reality, the ending feels more painful, not because you lost something amazing, but because you lost the dream you were building in your head. The brain is wired to seek resolution. It doesn't like open loops. So when a relationship ends without closure or ends in a way that leaves you confused or feeling undervalued, your mind goes into overdrive, trying to fill in the blanks. Why did he pull away? What could I have done differently? Was it even real for him? You keep thinking about him because your brain is trying to solve a puzzle that never had all the pieces. And here's the hard truth: you might never get the answers. But the good news is, you don't need them. You don't need every mystery solved to move forward. You just need to stop giving so much weight to the fantasy. The danger of staying in that fantasy is that it prevents you from truly healing. It keeps you emotionally attached to someone who may have already moved on, or someone who was never fully in to begin with. And worse, it trains your nervous system to chase highs instead of peace. You become addicted to the emotional roller coaster, the highs when he gives you attention and the lows when he pulls away. But real love doesn't feel like a gamble. It doesn't keep you guessing. It feels grounded, reciprocal, safe. And that's likely not the experience you had. So the next time you find yourself romanticizing him, pause. Ask yourself, what am I actually remembering right now? Is it the truth or is it my projection? Be honest about the whole story, not just the highlights. Did he show up consistently? Did he listen? Did he make you feel like a priority? Or did he leave you anxious, confused, and second-guessing yourself? Don't let selective memory keep you stuck. Every time you glorify the few good moments, you push your healing further away. Healing begins when you commit to loving the truth more than the fantasy. It begins when you stop trying to resurrect a version of someone that never fully existed. The version of him that's living in your mind? That version may have felt amazing in the moment, but if it wasn't backed up by consistent action, it wasn't real. Real love shows up. Real love doesn't leave you wondering where you stand. Real love doesn't make you beg for clarity or chase someone's attention like it's a reward for being good enough. So if you can't stop thinking about him, maybe it's time to stop thinking about who he could have been and start thinking about what you truly need. Not the fantasy, not the almost, but the reality of a relationship that meets you where you are, fully, consistently, and without all the emotional acrobatics. That's not too much to ask. It's the bare minimum. And the moment you believe that is the moment you stop being haunted by someone who never gave you what you truly deserved. We often think that moving on from someone is just about time passing, that somehow, if we wait long enough, the feelings will just fade. But when you can't stop thinking about him, it's not just time that's needed, it's presence, emotional presence with yourself. And this is where many people go wrong. Instead of sitting with their feelings, they escape them. They numb out through distractions, binge-watching shows, scrolling social media, overworking, dating someone new too fast, or romanticizing the past to avoid the pain of the present. And in doing so, they keep that person emotionally alive inside them, long after they've physically gone. Here's what most people don't realize. Obsessing over someone isn't just a product of love. It's often a product of emotional avoidance. When you think about him constantly, it might feel like love, but it's often your mind's way of avoiding what really needs to be felt. Maybe the heartbreak brought up feelings of abandonment, unworthiness, rejection, or not being chosen. Instead of facing those deeply rooted beliefs, your mind loops back to thoughts of him. Why? Because focusing on him is easier than facing your own wound. He becomes the symbol for a deeper fear, and as long as your focus stays on him, you don't have to sit with the discomfort of what his absence triggers in you. But true healing isn't found in distraction, it's found in turning inward. It's in sitting with that ache in your chest and asking it what it really needs. It's in being brutally honest with yourself, not just about how much you miss him, but about what his absence brings up for you. Is it fear that you won't find someone else? Is it a belief that you're not enough? Is it guilt for what you think you could have done differently? These are the real roots. And until they're addressed, the obsession with him will linger, not because he's unforgettable, but because he's the placeholder for an emotional wound that hasn't yet been healed. That's why self-awareness is so powerful. When you notice you're spiraling into thoughts about him, pause. Ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? What is this thought trying to protect me from? You'll often find that underneath the craving for his attention is a longing to feel seen, validated, safe, or worthy. And the truth is, he can't give you that now. Maybe he never could. But you can. You can give yourself the validation you were seeking from him. You can sit with your pain without needing someone else to fix it. That's emotional maturity. That's self-respect. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about owning that you do, but refusing to let that care run your life. It's about allowing the feelings to move through you without clinging to the story of him, without using him as the scapegoat for pain you've carried long before he even showed up. When you begin to separate the emotional trigger from the person, you take your power back. You stop waiting for closure, for a text, for a reunion, or for validation. You begin to give yourself the emotional safety you've been outsourcing. The more you practice emotional presence, the more you realize that the thoughts about him are just echoes, not truth. They don't need to be acted on. They don't even need to be judged. They just need to be witnessed, like waves passing through, and as they pass, space opens up inside you. Space for clarity, space for peace, space for someone new, but more importantly, space for you, the you that no longer chases ghosts, the you that stops looking backward and starts standing taller in the now, the version of you that doesn't need to get him back to feel whole because you've remembered that you already are. We often confuse fantasy with reality, especially when it comes to someone we can't stop thinking about. Our brain becomes a master storyteller, filling in gaps with idealized versions of moments that never happened, or painting the past with a filter that softens the parts that hurt. We replay the good times, magnify the sweet words, and build a movie in our minds where the story with him was perfect, or at least full of potential. And that's where we get stuck. Not in who he really was, but in who we thought he could be. It's not the man we're obsessed with, it's the idea of him. This is where emotional attachment gets dangerous, because when you're bonded to a fantasy, it becomes nearly impossible to move on. You're not just grieving the loss of a person, you're grieving the version of your future you imagined with them, the one where they changed or came back or realized you were the one all along. That mental picture becomes addictive. Every time you're lonely or triggered, your mind runs back to that imagined life like a comfort blanket. But here's the hard truth. That version of him never existed. He might have had potential, yes. He might have shown glimpses of depth, affection, maybe even love, but potential isn't a relationship, and hope isn't a commitment. People get addicted to hope. They stay longer than they should. They rationalize red flags. They accept crumbs because they think the full meal is just around the corner. He's just not ready. He's been through a lot. He says he cares. He's just bad at showing it. These are the narratives that keep you emotionally trapped. But let me ask you this. If someone has the ability to choose you, show up for you, value you, and they don't, what are you actually holding on to? A version of them that only exists in your imagination? A future they never promised but you silently wrote them into? What keeps you thinking about him isn't always love. It's unfinished emotional business. It's the absence of clarity. It's your mind chasing a story it never got to finish. But not every love story is meant to be completed. Some were only ever meant to teach you something about yourself, about your capacity to love, to hope, to dream, and eventually to walk away when those things weren't reciprocated. To break this obsession, you have to get honest about who he actually was when no one was watching. Not just how he made you feel when he was trying, but how he made you feel when he wasn't. Think about the way you felt when he was inconsistent, distracted, dismissive. Think about how often you questioned your worth, your value, your sanity. Was it really that magical? Or was it just the high of chasing approval? Real love feels safe, not confusing. It brings peace, not anxiety. When you're in a healthy connection, you don't need to overthink every message or overanalyze every silence. You don't need to convince someone to see your value. They see it. And if he didn't, you don't need to convince yourself that it was your fault. It wasn't. He just wasn't capable of giving what you were ready to receive. So instead of feeding the fantasy, feed your reality. Come back to yourself. Start focusing on your own life so intensely that you don't have time to overanalyze his. Build a routine that nourishes you. Surround yourself with people who reflect your worth back to you. Create moments that feel meaningful. Ones that don't involve replaying the past, but creating a new future that's no longer waiting on anyone else to validate it. Because the moment you stop romanticizing someone who couldn't meet you, you create space for someone who can. And most importantly, you remind yourself that your peace was never meant to be sacrificed for potential. The sixth, and perhaps most sobering truth, is that sometimes the obsession isn't even about him. It's about what his attention made you feel about yourself. It's about the identity you built when he noticed you, wanted you, or chased you. When someone gives you attention, especially someone you find charming, exciting, or hard to get, it creates a dopamine loop. That chemistry, that rush, isn't always love. It's validation. And when it's gone, you don't just miss them, you miss how you felt when they wanted you. That's why moving on feels so difficult. Because deep down, it's not just about mourning him. It's mourning the version of you that existed when he made you feel special, when he texted you late at night or made you feel like you were the exception. And even if those moments were inconsistent or fleeting, they had power. Not because they meant he was your forever person, but because they awakened something in you, a feeling of being chosen, of being wanted, of being seen. So when it ends or fades, the silence doesn't just hurt. It makes you question your worth. Your mind starts spinning. Why isn't he choosing me now? What did I do wrong? Was I not enough? That internal dialogue is what keeps the emotional grip so tight. And it's cruel because it makes you believe that your value is dependent on his ability to recognize it. That's the real trap. It's not him. It's what his attention represented. It validated something in you that you hadn't fully given yourself yet. If you want to break free from this cycle, you have to detach from the illusion that he defines your worth. You have to stop chasing the high of external validation and start asking yourself why you needed it so badly in the first place. Because real healing doesn't come from getting someone back. It comes from realizing you never needed them to feel good about yourself. You just thought you did. It's time to shift the focus. Instead of asking, why did he stop caring? Start asking, why did I stop caring about me? Why did his attention matter so much that I lost sight of my own power, my own beauty, my own value? Because the truth is, someone who truly values you doesn't make you question your place in their life. They don't feed you just enough to keep you hanging on. They don't create a situation where your self-esteem depends on whether they respond or show up. You are not here to be addicted to someone's crumbs of affection. You are not here to spend your nights refreshing your messages or replaying old conversations like they were promises. You are here to rise, to love yourself so deeply that anyone who fails to match that energy becomes irrelevant, not irresistible. And yes, it takes time, it takes discipline, it takes moments of sitting in the discomfort without reaching for the phone, without checking his socials, without hoping for that one message that will make everything make sense. But each time you choose you instead of the fantasy, you get stronger. Each time you redirect your thoughts from him to your own life, your goals, your passions, your peace, you're taking your power back. The moment you stop needing his attention to feel valuable, you start becoming magnetic, not just to others, but to yourself. You start walking in a way that says, I'm whole, with or without you. And when you operate from that energy, you don't chase closure, you become the closure. Not because you got an explanation, but because you remembered who the hell you are. So when you find yourself caught in the loop of thinking about him non-stop, remember this, it's never really about him. It's about the feelings his attention stirred inside you, the sense of being wanted, seen, and valued. The real breakthrough comes when you stop relying on someone else to provide that validation and instead reclaim it for yourself. When you shift your focus inward, you break free from the cycle of obsession and regain your power. You become the person who isn't defined by someone else's choices, but by your own worth, your own confidence, and your own self-love. That's when you truly move on, grow stronger, and open the door for something better, because you're no longer chasing a shadow, but stepping fully into your own light.